Okay, so in this next series of videos, I want to show you how to use server-side technology. In particular, we're going to look at Node.js, and then we're going to look at hooking our web application up to a database, namely MongoDB. So let me just show you the somewhat useless application that we're going to build. Let me go over and I'm going to make sure that it's running. Actually, it looks like it is running, but okay. So and then let me go to here. Here's the application running on my machine. So basically, it does two things. One is that I can type something in here like so, and basically whatever it is that I happen to type, it actually puts in all uppercase, right? The internet equivalent of shouting, right? So use your inside voice, etc. And so the way that this is happening is behind the scenes we're doing an AJAX request back to the web application to do the upcasing. Yeah, it's overkill. We could do that in pure JavaScript on the client side, but this is a demo just to kind of give you an idea of how to do such a thing. The other feature that it has is this translate feature, and so we can do things like hello friend, right? And so this is actually an English to pirate translator, if you will, right? So that gets translated like so. I could do a phrase like this: pardon me, miss. Can you help me find the hotel? Right, and there it is. Right, so we can see or we can see basically this translation that happening. What is actually happening behind the scenes? Again, it's an AJAX request, but this time for the translations, we're actually using the database MongoDB for doing that type of translation. And again, we're going to see how to make that happen in this series of videos. All right, so let me come over to here. Let me actually kill this. And what I'm just going to do, I'm going to create a brand new project within WebStorm to do all of this stuff. So I'll go ahead and I'll create a brand new project. And so notice that WebStorm has the ability to create a Node.js Express app, right? If you've already done the reading in the book, you've seen a lot of how to use these various things. Unfortunately, though, the book pretty much tends to be fairly IDE or editor agnostic, and so as a result, a lot of the usage of how to do this tends to be command line based. That's fine if you want to work that way. Generally, most people tend to try to use some form of IDE to simplify that. So we're going to do just that here, right? So I'm just going to name my project Node Demo. You'll notice it figured out the sort of latest version of Node. Yes, we are going to use Jade. We're just going to use plain CSS. You'll notice the application is created with Express Generator. So let me go ahead and create this, and then we'll kind of see what all that's about and everything. I'm going to create it in a new window. So it takes a minute to create all of this stuff. And what Express Project Generator does, it kind of gives you a basic Node.js web application that is ready to run and somewhat separate built. There are a couple of things. One, it's sort of separated out into nice little parts. So notice they have the public folder. They have this routes folder for the individual routes. They have a separate views folder, and so on. The other thing is they actually add in a number of different libraries to Node.js, libraries that are fairly commonly used for a Node.js project. I actually toyed with the idea of showing you, because you can just create a basic JavaScript application, Node.js, basic JavaScript application from within WebStorm, and then add in all this functionality. But honestly, then you still are sort of missing debugging features and things like that, and it tends to get a little unwieldy. So I decided to just show you this way and kind of help you make sense of all this stuff. Okay, so the main so right now, even before I do anything, right, I just want to show you this. This is an actual application. So if I go here and I click the run button, it says yeah, it's running and so forth. I'm doing all of that. Let's go over. If I go to my browser, right, so by default it actually throws this. It runs the server on port 3000. And so now when I load this, you'll notice it looks rather different, right? It just says, just gives me Express, welcome to Express. Okay, let's take a look at how that's doing that. Oops, sorry. So if I come over to here, the main code is in app.js. Okay, so if I take a look at app.js, we see a bunch of things. Okay, of course, they are using Express. I do get a little thing here, right? Enable file watch to transpile ECMAScript 6 to ECMAScript 5 using Babel. Our current version of Node is capable of dealing with ECMAScript 6, so we don't really need to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and click no, get rid of that. Notice it does make use of Express. It actually has a couple of other things: path, fave icon, logger. These, honestly, I'm probably not going to do much with, but I'll leave them in nonetheless. There's cookie parser for dealing with cookies, body parser. This is actually going to be important. Here is how, and this is different from what is shown in the book, of how the routes are done separately, right? So it basically sort of adds these separate files out and does this require. There's some other kind of little magic, if you will, that happens in those files, and certainly you can go ahead and take a look at them. For our application, we're really only going to have a couple of routes, so having these separate route files is complete overkill. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete those. I'm just going to come here and I'll say, yeah, go ahead. And, well, actually, hang on, just before I do that, let me go in and show you, right? So it uses this is one of the things that is missing from our book, namely the use of router and so forth. You'll see it's calling render for index, passing stuff along and all that. Okay, again, I'm going to get rid of this because it's overkill. So I'll click delete to delete this folder. It's going to delete all that. Of course, now when I go to rerun my program, it dies a horrible death, right? Why? Take a look. Can't find module routes index because I deleted that stuff. So these two things here are basically going to go. So we get rid of those. We're still not done. If I go ahead and try to run this, there is one other place that those were being used. So notice, reference error index is not defined. If I click here, it will take me right there. Yeah, apps used for index, and users was the other variable there too. Again, we don't need either of those, so we're going to get rid of those things. All right, let's make sure that that this is in fact good. Okay, notice it is actually running. If I do that now, I do get this little message here of something not found, and that's because we don't now have a route for /, right? So we'll build that in just a minute. Now, a couple of other stylistic things. Okay, so one is, it turns out that that Express generator is generating code using this old style JavaScript, right? So using var. In current versions of JavaScript, namely ECMAScript 6, the preferred method is to use a let, right? Let is actually better than var. And also we have the ability to declare things constants. And it turns out that all of these, in fact, are constants. So I'm going to actually fix that. I will change these to constants because it's just going to bother me otherwise. Let me come into here, and so we'll say, okay, search for var space, and I will replace that with const space, and I'm just going to do a replace all, and not only did it actually change those, there's one other use right here. It could, I guess, be a constant. I'm actually I'll actually change this over to a let. Okay. So there we have some of the cosmetic issues fixed up and so forth. Here we see, the various middlewares being employed. So the use of the static middleware, saying look in the public folder, and we see these various other middlewares being installed. There's for handling any basically 404, right? So if things aren't working, then we're going to basically generate that. Let's go and take a look at some of these other parts as well. Okay, so yeah, we're going to leave it at 2. That's okay. All right. So basically, we can use, and sorry, let me put this down below that particular handler. All right. So we'll use our route. So we'll add in a route for the top level, right? So we'll say, okay, if somebody does a GET request on the on just slash, like we're trying to do here, what is it that we're supposed to do? Okay, and again, Express Generator here is using sort of this old style type of anonymous function. I'm going to use the newer style, right? So basically rec and res and that, right? Use what are called JavaScript's arrow functions. This basically is the same thing as having an anonymous function where you say function and all that. Notice it's just a little tighter. All right, so we can do anything we want here, right? So we could certainly just say send, and we could say hello from Node, like so. Okay, so when I go ahead and rerun this, if I come back over and reload my code, really? That's interesting. What is the issue? App.js 24. All right, it's right here. New error. Let me try this. Oh, sorry. Want to rerun that. There we go. All right, and foo. Yes, right, so foo doesn't get found. Okay, there we are. All right, so there's our hello from Node. Again, if we take a look, we do an inspection, we see, there's nothing really special. That's just a plain old body text. Obviously, if we wanted to generate something else, for instance, we wanted to make this an H1, we could do that accordingly. And again, coming into here, now we see, yes, it's much bigger. There it is in the when we're doing the inspect, that yes, it is in fact an H1. Okay, now the point is, if you're looking at this and you're saying, geez, this seems like it's really gonna suck typing HTML into the raw strings in JavaScript. Yeah, your instincts are right. Okay, and as the book talks about, typically what we do is we deal with templating engines, and so there is already a view set up for us. Namely, there is index.jade, and here is that. No, we're not using Pug. We're actually using the other. We're actually using Jade itself, so I don't need to add that. All right. So here's our main layout. Notice it basically. So to make use of that, what we can do. Oops, sorry. Control/. All right. I can say res render, and basically then just give it the name of the file minus Jade. Right. So index is the particular template that we want, and when we do that, what we now see is we get welcome to and nothing. Again, now here's what I want to do. I want to inspect on this, right? So if we take a look, notice we have an empty H1. There actually is no title, etc. But we do see welcome to and all of that. Now, again, if we come back over to Jade, this is the actual file that we're serving. Where does all this stuff come from? How does all this happen? Okay. Node.js is a server-side framework. So the conversion of this, of index.jade, together with layout.jade, which is also being used, that is all happening on the server, right? So before the data gets sent to the client, to our web browser, it is run through the Jade template engine and ultimately then converted into what we see here. Now, why are we getting welcome to and nothing else? Well, because basically we need to notice this this template has the ability for us to specify the title. Okay, so to do that, what we do is in render here, we basically give it a map that contains the various items that we want. So for instance, I could say, since our app is going to be called shout/translate, I will put that in for title. Okay, so let me go ahead and rerun that. And I'm going to come back over here and let me go ahead and do a reload. Notice there's my title. Right, it actually was inserted into the title part, and it's also inserted directly into H1. Again, let's take a look at the template. Right, so H1 title, we get welcome to title. Right, so all of those plus in layout, it's also making use of title there. Right, so the three uses of the title. Right, so there's the title, and there's the title. Many uses of that. So the whole idea behind template languages is a couple of things. One is we get a cleaner separation of what is known sort of as the business logic, right here, the routing and the raw JavaScript and so forth, from what is presentation, right? So the presentation side being index.jade, layout.jade. Additionally, the nice thing that we get with Jade is that it gives us this simplified version of HTML, right? So we don't have the additional angle brackets in there. We don't have to have an explicit open and close tag. Simply by doing indentation, we get the fact that that things are nested within something else, right? So this says that the content block is going to be inside the body. This says these things are going to be inside the head, etc. Right? Really, really nice. Basically kind of streamlines HTML for us. Okay, so there's our general get. Our general get request gives us the root. Okay, so if we're going to follow kind of best practice of keeping these concerns separate, that's generally how we want to do that. Now let's take a look at adding in our web page. That is, remember, we needed to have a form. The form basically, or at least needed to have an area for the user to enter their data, and then some JavaScript and so forth for handling that. All right, so let's take a look at this. So I'm going to come back over to index, and so right here after all of this, I'm simply going to start adding in some stuff. So I'm going to say, okay, I want an input box, and then we'll use the Jade syntax for specifying attributes. That is having a parenthesis. Note one of the things: don't put a space here. Jade doesn't like that. All right, so we want a text type of input, and we'll have a placeholder that says enter text, like so. Yes, again, that's okay. And of course, we will give it a name, so that when that gets, ultimately when that gets submitted or whatnot, it will actually technically we're not submitting the form, so I guess we don't really need that. Okay, so there that is. Let me go ahead and stop and rerun. I think actually with, you know what, let me leave that off and then we'll just see. I believe that actually for modifying the Jade templates, I don't have to do a stop and rerun, but we'll take a look. Yeah, there it is, right? So welcome to Shout Translate. There's our input text right there, and notice there is how Jade renders that. So it says input type text placeholder equals that. There it is. Okay, pretty good. Now, we're going to need a couple of other things as well. So we're going to need a place to store the results. And again, if you refer back to the demo, you'll notice that I had basically an unordered list. Okay, and I'm going to manipulate that from from JavaScript. So I'm going to actually need a way of getting to that. And so basically, I'm going to give it this particular ID results. Also, I'm going to need to be able to access this input field here from JavaScript, and so I'll give it the ID of input. Again, I'll make sure that's saved, and then I'm going to come over to here, and there's what we have. And again, you can see, so we have our ID equal to input. There's our unordered list. There are no list elements inside it, so we're not seeing anything just yet. Okay. Now let's look at adding some other stuff. Okay, so we're going to need a few things. I have over here a starter, this shout_trans.js starter file. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. And let me just go ahead. I'm going to say save link as, and I'm going to drop this over in where I happen to have my project. So there's Node demo, and then I'm going to go into public, and then I'm going to go into JavaScripts, and I'm going to save it right there. Okay, so that will save that particular file in the right location. I can come back over to here. I'm going to open up public. I'm going to open up JavaScripts. There's our shout trans script. And let's just take a quick look at what this does. Okay. So notice the $ uses, so right away that should tip you off that I'm using jQuery in here, and so that means we are in fact going to need to load the jQuery library. So just kind of put a pin in that in the back of your mind, right? So we wait for the document to be ready, then right we search for the ID input, right? Again, the input ID, and we are registering a change listener. Okay, so whenever the ID is changed, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to grab the value that is in that particular field, set that to text, and then we're going to make our AJAX request, right? So we say go to the route /shout, pass along this particular, right? So notice we're passing along the text as text::JSON. I'm sorry, text::text. Right? When we're done, okay, we're actually outputting something of whatever data it is that we get back to the console. Then we go to our results field right here. Okay, notice we're doing a prepend, so that's going to add it to the top, and we basically say, okay, whatever result we got back, right, so that's data itself, we're going to grab the result field and just stick that inside LIs. Okay, and then also notice we are resetting the text box. So we go over to the text box, we set its value field to the empty string. And of course, if this fails, then we are going to pop up an alert that we couldn't contact the server, and of course log the actual error. Okay, so that's what that does. Now let's basically patch the rest of this stuff in. Okay, so, oops, sorry. First things first. Let's get the script loaded here. So our script, we're going to say load up the script, and that's going to be, that is in JavaScripts /shout trans.js. Okay. Again, let me save this. It's probably not going to work as we load this up, but we'll take a look. All right, so we come over to here. Right, notice, uncaught reference error, $ is not defined. Right, what's going on? Well, we haven't loaded the JavaScript library. So, how do we go about doing this? Well, right now, the way this template is set up, notice we are getting the head portion of our HTML from this layout.jade. Okay, so that part basically is this part is the general template that presumably is going to be used for having all the common elements for our web application. Could I load up the JavaScript library here? I could, but that then basically assumes that on every single page we're going to want to have the JavaScript library. I may not actually want to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just as we have block content here, I'm going to use I'm going to use the same type of thing. I'm going to say, okay, we expect a block, and since it's in the head section, I'm going to call it block head, right? So we have block head there. I can even add in an extra little line. So that gives me the ability now in here to specify that particular item. So we can say blockhead, right? And then basically we need to load up jQuery. So let's do a quick search for jQuery, and here's the CDN link, right? And we see there is the, so we have the min or the minified version. Let me go ahead and pull that up, and there's our various options, right? So let me just kind of grab all of this right now, and then we'll convert this over to Jade, right? So we're going to say script, then I kind of paste all of that stuff in. Let's see, so we don't need the script tag here. Our source, that stuff is fine. Make sure to put in our commas, and that should basically do it. Okay, so that should get JavaScript loaded onto our page. Let's take a look, right? So I'm just going to kill this, and I'm going to come back over to here, and notice that error, in fact, goes away. And so now, for instance, when I hit enter, now I get that error saying problem contacting server, right? The server is actually running. The problem is that, notice, if we go to this route, let me click OK. If I go to the route that it's trying to connect to, I get a 404. We haven't built that route yet. Okay, so let's build it. We simply need to come back over to app.js, and just like we created a route for the root, we're going to do the same thing here and create a route for that JSON endpoint. Okay. So let me come down to here, and we'll just say, okay, app. And I'm going to actually set it up on the get. It makes it kind of easier also for testing as well. And so we'll say, all right, here is the route for shout. And again, we'll have rec and res. So that's the shout, right? Here is the main page. So notice I said that this is a JSON endpoint. The point is that presumably this route is only going to be used when someone from JavaScript in an AJAX manner. That is, presumably we're not expect this to be used directly, right? So we're building sort of the traditional or what is a very common web API, right? What typically they refer to as a RESTful API. And you see a lot of these types of things. There's a lot of Google APIs and so forth that work in this particular manner. So let's look at how we're going to build this. Now, we can do this kind of one of two ways. If we already have the client built, namely the JavaScript, we can look at that and see how it's called. More likely, usually what you're doing is you're deciding on the server side how you want your API to work. So what we're going to do with this one is, in terms of how we want it to work, is we want there to be a URL parameter sent in, or a GET request parameter, right? So we will say, we'll basically just do a let statement here. I'll say let the input equal req query dot text. Okay. Now A couple of things. So we see that query is basically a, oops, sorry, make sure there's an equal sign. Query is a field on rec. This gets populated, namely from some of the middleware that we have in here for loading up stuff. Text is special, and we'll see why in a minute. Okay, but first let me just kind of make some stuff happen here. So I'll say, all right, we're going to do a send, and we'll just reply back with input is and what the input itself is. And, maybe if we want to make it look kind of fancy, we can even put some quotes around it. That way we can make sure that there's no extra white space or anything like that. Okay, so there it is. And let me go ahead and just run this. And so I'm going to come back over, and we will load up localhost. And so now I'm going to use the actual endpoint we just added. Okay, so I'll say shout, and then to provide a parameter, I could do something like question mark text equals hello. Right, so that is how this should be a review, but that is how a URL parameter is basically added in, right? And so notice we see input is hello, and so then we could do things like goodbye. We could try it without the parameter altogether. Namely, it just looks like that. Okay, so you get a sense of what this is, what this basically is doing. Okay, so we need to, from our client, from the JavaScript, when we make the call to the shout API or the shout URL, we have to pass that parameter along in that fashion. So let's take a look. I'm going to go over to the JavaScript file, and you'll notice right here where we're doing the GET request. So there is the URL, and this is how we pass along those parameters, right? So we're passing along, notice the parameter named text, right? It's named text simply because of this part here. Okay, so that text there matches essentially the particular parameter that we are doing the lookup for right here. Okay, that's how that actually works. And if we happen to have messed it up, so for instance, suppose I do something like that. Then of course we have text equals so and so. It says, oh no, input is undefined, right? Because again, the value that we have within the query is in fact text. All right, so now that we have that, and we can see how those things are communicating to one another, we can actually go about using this. So all our shout API is doing, as you've seen, is basically taking the entire string and converting it to uppercase. Now, I could just look up the functionality within MDN or something like that, but also maybe I want to play around with it a little bit. So if I run the terminal and I go to Node or run Node, now I have my own little JavaScript interpreter here. So for instance, notice I can do 3 + 4. Right there it is. I can do console log hi, etc. So let's just try something. Let's say we have like one of the examples that we used, use your inside voice. So there is a to uppercase method of the string class in JavaScript, and so when we do that, you'll notice it basically takes all of the letters and puts them in uppercase. Okay, if there happens to be punctuation in this, you'll notice the punctuation is in fact preserved. It is simply the letter characters themselves that are actually changed, which is what we would kind of hope. So being done with that, I can exit that. I can also exit the terminal. So given that, it's really simple to write our response, except I'm going to now actually use the JSON method of the res of the response object. Okay, so JSON as the name of the method suggests, returns something in JavaScript object notation. Okay, this is in terms of building web APIs, RESTful APIs. Typically, there are a couple of different ways that responses will be returned. One of the original ones was XML. In fact, the X in Ajax stands for XML. But XML can tend to be a bit wordy or noisy, etc. There's lots of syntax. It kind of looks like basically looks like HTML. On the other hand, JSON is JavaScript object notation, and essentially all you're doing is passing along JavaScript objects, so it's much more succinct, and especially given the fact that we are going to process the results in JavaScript, that makes it even easier. Okay, so all we're going to do is I'm going to create a very simple JavaScript object that has a single field, basically, so it's a simple map. We have a field or a key that is called result, and all that's going to be is input to uppercase, like so. Okay, so we return back, really literally we return back kind of open bracket, result colon, and then the result of calling in up to uppercase on input. And we return that as JSON to whoever called us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reboot or rerun the server, my application, and I'll come over to here, and now when I run it, notice I get back this thing here. So it says result colon goodbye, right? Or for instance, if we did hello world, right, there's that as well. The one other thing, if you go back and take a look at the example that I showed, it was also appending an exclamation mark on the end of that. Right, it kind of gives it more of that shouting type of meaning. Right, and so again here we can just try this out. There it is, hello world exclamation mark. Right, so having the parameters in the URL that is doing it via get certainly makes it much easier to test out our web API. Okay, so now that we have that, we're convinced that the shout endpoint is working. Let's actually go back over to the main page itself. Okay, so now the main page should actually work the way it's supposed to. So let's give it a try. I say hello, I hit enter, and notice there we have hello all in uppercase and exclamation mark, right? What, again, or use your inside voice, like so. So I want to just point out a little bit about what's going on here. Okay, so again, this is an Ajax request. Okay, so remember, the whole idea behind Ajax was to make web pages more responsive. Okay, before dealing with Ajax, every time you dealt with a form or submitted a form, you had to basically do a round trip to the server. Essentially, you'd send the information to the server, and then you'd wait for an entire page to come back from the server. Here, take a look at. So if you watch just right here, when I type something in, so let's do my name, Dr. Phil Ventura. Now, as I hit enter, I want you to just kind of watch right here. So when I hit enter, notice it does a get to shout text, passes along that, then it gets back the response and simply updates this portion of the page. It didn't have to re-render the entire page or get this entire page from the server. All it got was that little string and added that into the appropriate part. That's the point of Ajax, and it allows us to have all manner of functionality, including things like when you'll see when people are typing into a form and it's doing sort of a lookup of things and so forth. So all of those are typically done by Ajax. So that gives you a basic idea of how this works, how Node works, how Ajax can kind of work, how you can put these things together. In the next video, what I'm going to show is how to install or talk a little bit about installing Mongo, the Mongo database, and kind of what that is. And then in the final video, what we'll show is how to build the translate part of this using the data that's in the database. If you have any questions, you're in my class. post them on Piazza. And if you found us on the interwebs, if you have questions, just post them down in the comments.